grade 8 short answer question that has to do with finding the rule is a little bit complicated because there's a third part to it. So if you see on the graph here, it's not going up by a constant. There's periods of time where it's going up constantly, but there's breaks in between. So it's a little bit more complex. So let's take a look at it here. So it says a taxi company charges 3 different fees to its customers. An initial fee that must be paid to get in the taxi. So anytime you see initial fee or base fee or something like that, this is talking about your B. Okay? A fee per kilometer traveled. So per kilometer, this is going to be our A in this case. And a fee per minute spent waiting for a customer who was running errands. So the graph below illustrates the total cost of Mrs. Clark's most recent taxi ride in relation to the distance traveled. So that's why I put this as my, sorry, you can't see the graph. That's why I put the kilometers as my A, because it's talking about distance and it's talking about the total cost on the Y. Okay, so we're gonna just try and figure that out and figure out what the fee is. So the question is saying underneath, it says Mrs. Clark says that she asked the taxi driver to wait for a total of 10 minutes for her 2 errands. So in the total amount of time in between on the graph, there was 10 minutes where the cab driver was waiting for her. So we have to figure out what is the fee charged by the taxi company to wait for a customer in dollars per minute. So whatever answer we get, we're going to have to divide it by 10 because it was waited for 10 minutes. And we have to figure out the cost per minute. Okay, so I'm going to try and work through this graph and then act like there was a straight line relationship here. Okay, so really, if she hadn't made any of the stops with the taxi, I'm going to try and figure out around here, and I'm going to tell you in a second why I'm using this point. I'm going to try and figure out what the cost would have been there without the 10 minutes of waiting. Okay, so I'm going to figure out my A and B, but the thing is I want to use points on the graph that I can actually read. So they've given you these points, but I'm not actually sure here between 15 and 20 what that point would actually be. Okay, so I'm going to use points that I can actually read. So we know that the initial value, or the B, is the Y value when X is equal to 0. So right away, so I'm going to go over here and do find my rule. Okay, so I'm looking for Y equals AX plus B. I can read off of the graph that my B is $4. Okay, so that you should be able to go and look and see on the graph that it's the point where it's touching the Y-axis. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for A. So my rate of change is change in Y over change in X. So it's Y2 minus Y1 divided by X2 minus X1. And you label 2 points on your graph. So I'm going to start with one of my points is going to be 0 and 4. And my second point, I'm going to choose one that I can read. So even though there's a dot here, I see here that it's actually touching 5 and 12 here. So this point is going to be 5 and 12. So this is my X2, Y2, and this is, X1, Y1, and this is my X2, Y2. So my point 1 and my point 2. So then I plug in the values into my formula. So Y2 is 12. I do 12 minus 4, and it's divided by 5 minus 0. Okay, so 12 minus 4 is 8. 5 minus 0 is 5. You can't see past this. If you actually do 8 divided by 5 in your calculator, or however you want to do it, it's going to come out to $1.60. So this is going to be 1.60. Okay, and we are talking about cost here. So now my rule is that the cost is $1.60 per kilometer plus $4 that you have as the initial fee when you get into the taxi. Okay, so I'm going to move over to the other side and write some stuff on this side, but I am going to take this rule with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this point again on the graph. Okay, I'm going to use 15 because here, this point is 15 and 36. So that means that in reality, with the stops, okay, when she went 15 kilometers, it cost her $36. But I want to know how much would it have cost her if she did not make those stops. And then I'm going to figure out how much the cost was per minute that the taxi driver was waiting for her. So I'm going to plug this 15. This is going to be my X. And I'm going to plug it into this formula and see what Y should have been at the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to do it a little bit on this side. So again, I'm just copying the same formula that we were just using. So it was Y equals $1.60 X plus 4. Use the 15 as the X. So Y equals $1.60 times 15 plus 4. Okay, and if you plug that in, you should get Y equals 28. So that means that it was supposed to cost $28 to travel 15 kilometers. However, if we look on the graph right here, she is paid $36 at this point. So she's getting charged $36 to go 15 kilometers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this should be 28, but it's actually 36. So I'm going to say 36 minus 28. Okay, so this comes out to 8. So there's an extra $8 that she paid. Okay, so that for the extra 10 minutes that the taxi driver was waiting for her, it cost an extra $8. So the last thing is that if it costs $8 for him to wait for her for 10 minutes, how much does it cost to wait for 1 minute? You don't have to do that cross multiplication if you don't need to, but really you're just doing $8 divided by 10 to figure out how much it would cost for 1 minute. So the answer is that it would cost $0.8 because it was supposed to be in dollars, the answer, which is 80 cents per minute. Okay, so this is really a lot of work, I find, for a short answer question. But you would have to copy this onto your answer paper. So it's 80 cents per minute. And you cannot write it as cents because it specifically says to write it in dollars per minute. Okay? If you have questions about this one, come and ask me again in class and I'll have my copy available for you to look at.